Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Her Faith Inspires podcast, where we take cultural issues and we tackle them with biblical truth. I have a very special guest for you guys this week, and I've been telling you that my husband's going to be back on the podcast, and this week he is. We haven't had him on. I think it's been about a year and a half. I was actually talking to him about this the other day and saying how long it's been. And usually we come up with a podcast episode idea when we're taking walks, because we talk about a lot of things all the time, like whether it be marriage or raising kids. And obviously that seems normal because that's what we do on a daily basis. We're married and we raise our kids together. But cultural issues is a lot of what we talk about because we deal with those things even with our boys. So whenever we get a chance to, I have him on so he can share his wisdom, because he is very wise. And a lot of you probably don't know this, that I bounce ideas off of Dean all the time, talk to him about what I post. He knows about all of my podcast episodes. He knows about my reaction videos to, last week when I was talking about womanizers and things like that, Dean will look at those things with me and give me his feedback. So we are celebrating our 22-year anniversary this week, and that's why I wanted to have him on as well. The timing is perfect. Our middle child has just graduated from high school, so it's time for us to talk about the roles of fatherhood and motherhood and marriage and things like that. And who better to do that with than my own husband, who lives this with me. So I just want to say, Dean, welcome back to Her Faith Inspires podcast.
Thank you.
So it's been a while. And what's funny is that I know it looks weird because Dean's not sitting right next to me. We tried that. I mean, I'm not afraid to show you guys behind the scenes stuff. So he was sitting next to me. I didn't like the way it looked. I mean, we could both fit in the view of the camera, but I was just like, no, it's not going to work for me. So he went downstairs. So he's actually in our dining room. And, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do to make it work. So and he's a good sport. And so we're talking about the roles of men and women, like I said. So first, babe, I just wanted to say, do you remember what we talked about the last time you were on?
I don't.
Yeah, I know we gave an update on our move because we had only been here for like 3 months.
Okay.
And then we talked a little bit about we've talked a lot about like fatherlessness in the home and in the America itself, things like that. So we talked a lot, but probably one of those things. So we're going to be talking about that this week. But I wanted to start off with a question that I didn't tell you we were going to talk about. Somebody asked me this week how we talk to our boys about being men and being manly in a culture that basically always labels things as toxic masculinity. So I wanted you to kind of speak into that, because I did answer that question myself this week.
Yeah, that's definitely a hot word right now for the last, maybe year, is toxic masculinity. And me and you, like you said, we've talked about a lot of these topics before when we go for our walks, just with our boys. We talk about this stuff almost every night with our boys. And I think I brought up before that those two words don't belong together. Toxic has its own definition and masculinity has its own, and they're not together. Like, there's bad guys out there, just like there's women who aren't great. We don't call it toxic femininity. Those two words don't belong together. Masculine has its own definition and what it is to be a man, and boys, they're born with some innate things. But bad things come out on everything with women and men. So to call it toxic and try to sum up everything that is a man and attach the word toxic is just another way, they almost like identity politics. They try to get you to categorize if you wear a MAGA hat with you're racist or you're a bigot. And to put those together, they don't even belong together. I wouldn't even address somebody who already has those words on their mind, and that's where their thoughts are. They're already thinking incorrectly. They're not something that you can just debate and argue, because you're kind of jumping into foolishness right off the bat when you address those two words together.
I think we kind of talked about the same thing. Everything manly is toxic. So you're not even defining with the word toxic. You're not even defining the behavior that you're saying is an issue. Because if everything manly is toxic, then you're just saying a man in general is toxic.
Yeah, correct.
Not needed.
Yeah, toxic. Like, I've looked up all these things before, because I didn't go to school in the sense of where I only went to high school, so I don't have this extra education. So I look up words because I feel like I never really learned the meanings of a lot of words. So I look up those words, toxic, masculinity, and try to get the original definition. It's just poison. So what about masculinity is poison to anybody? So I don't understand how those two would ever correlate. But the fact they put it together should be offensive to men because there's nothing toxic about being a man. Now, people might not like it right now. They might not like people who are different than a woman, which is aggressive, more stern with their kids. But those are needed. Like when you talk about our boys, we balance each other out. Obviously, I'm not a nurturer, you are. But over nurturing someone is kind of where we're at with our young men today. They're coming out extremely feminine and they're not learning manly things like hard jobs and just going to work and grinding things out. We talk to our boys about that all the time. Like you have to get through the hard. You have to learn how to push through that uncomfort. And women have more of a nurture with the feelings. And you as a man, we remove those a lot. And you need the balance of both parts when you're addressing young men.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So along those lines with toxic masculinity, one of the things that we've been seeing in the spotlight a lot lately is, well, it started with Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light. And here's what I find fascinating about this Bud Light boycott. When you look at the demographics of who drinks Bud Light, it's mostly men. And so as soon as Bud Light starts to go this way with having Dylan Mulvaney on a can and promoting this influencer on this can, men rise up and boycott it. Yet you have men dressing like women, saying that they're women, all in these makeup and cosmetic companies, and women, I mean, they're not hurting. I haven't heard anything about like L'Oreal. I haven't heard anything about, all of these makeup like Sephora and Ulta that are like hurting in stocks or anything like that. So I find it rather intriguing. Like this is where I'm like, the men really stood up in with their pocketbooks and didn't support Bud Light, and Bud Light is feeling it right there. What does that say about like men in our culture? Like what would you say?
Yeah, I think the majority of men don't like anything that's going on. You know, we don't feel that we're the dumbed down. I think we did something on this before, like dumbed down dads. Like all the TVs have the guys as nitwits. They're dumb. From the kids shows to the Simpsons, the dads are just a doofus. Dads don't feel that way. I don't. Like we go out, we work hard. All the guys I know go out and support their families. So they're not buying this. So I'm not sure really the point of pushing that agenda. And obviously it didn't work, but they really want this to take place. And the reason why is the men are the strength of the family. They're the pillars of their family. So the more you can tear that down, the more you can influence everybody. And that's what they're doing. They're coming after kids. They're coming after women and trying to change their minds of what a man really is. And men aren't buying it, but men do need to speak up. And that's how they did it right there. Obviously men do speak up with their wallets. So the fact that they boycotted it is actually it was good to see. And hopefully that keeps continuing, because people who do things like this, I was trying to think about it. You need to be shamed because it's a shameful act. What they're doing is shameful. And our culture wants to hide shame all the time. They want to disguise it as it's me or it's how I feel. And it's wrong. And if it's shameful, they should be shamed for it.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're obviously seeing currently Target taking a hit, which I would say, who shops at Target more? Mostly women, especially moms. And when they see these tuck friendly swimsuits and things like that, as a mom who's trying to protect her children, she's saying, okay, no more shopping at Target. So obviously women have risen up in that regard. I think men seeing this turn with Bud Light really made people realize like, oh, wait a second, we do have a voice. Like we may not be able to, even if you say it on social media, it doesn't really, how effective is that? But when you're seeing this in your everyday life and you're seeing where you can not put your money into a specific company, that really shows that you have control in that way. And I think that it made a difference. But it almost started with the men, with Bud Light. Like men took
Correct. And men need to do that. And so we were talking in our small group last night, and I really enjoyed this discussion of the difference between action and reaction. They want a reaction out of people. They want views, they want hits, they want to sell merchandise, and they want that through that reaction of having this guy who's tucking his junk and acting like, and not even acting like a woman, he's acting like a little girl. And so about as perverted as you can get, and they just want reaction. But you need to have action. You need to step up to the plate, shame these people who are doing shameful acts, and withhold your money. Same as Target, Bud Light. You need action, not reaction. Reacting is just engaging, and you have to be careful with that fine line of engaging in these foolish acts or acting like this and opposing those ideologies. And the way you do that, first step with most people, is with your pocketbook. Stop supporting them. And you need to. They're hard things to do. They're very difficult, but you need to stop supporting Starbucks, Target, all these things. And I understand we operate and we need our coffee and we need to get clothes, but you have to have some standard at some point. And supporting things that are a detriment to your family. And it's not just your political belief. It's not saying, hey, I'm supporting a Democrat or a liberal. You're supporting a absolute perverted sense of thinking, and it's going to hurt your kids. It's not just what you think. As they keep growing this, it's just going to be a detriment to your family and your boys and your girls. And so people need to step up now and really act and continue this pursuit of stop supporting and giving your money away to these people.
Right. That's very well said. I like the reaction and action part, because really you have a choice to do one of the two. Reactions are going to get no change. Action is the only thing that brings the change. And it's the right action. It's the right steps. Like, what's the next step that I can do right now to show that I'm like boycotting Bud Light? Okay, that's easy. Like, no, I don't even drink beer. So that works, right? Boycotting Target, like I was saying, I already stopped going to Target for the last couple of years because of the bathroom thing. So that hasn't been difficult for me. But when, for example, me and our youngest were going to go shopping tomorrow for his summer clothes, and we had Kohl's on our list, and now I've heard that Kohl's is starting to come out like Target. So I'm like, okay, I need to look at this and see, do I want to put my money there? Because as soon as somebody says, this is what I'm not just promoting, you're endorsing it. You're endorsing this ideology and this, like you said, this way of thinking, and you're pushing it onto kids, which are so impressionable. Why would I want to take my kid to a department store who is in his middle school years in that very impressionable stage, walk past these LGBTQIA stuff with all the rainbow? It's not just a piece of clothing. I mean, it's the rainbow. It's the wording of pride. Homophobic was on Target's language, had something about homophobia, all of these things. So it's like, I choose as a mom, if I want to go to that store, walk past that merchandise with my child who gets to also see it and purchase things from them, maybe not that thing, but from them, and support them so they can continue on with this way of thinking. That's a no for me. And that is one actionable step that I can take. Now, sometimes I walk away and think, will it matter? Will it make an impact? It doesn't matter. It means I didn't give my money to that thing. And so it will matter in that regard, no matter who else around me is doing it. And so,
more than the support of and holding money, and just like you said, you have to have a standard. If you don't have standards, then what good are you? You have to have standards. So don't worry about Bud Light and don't worry about Target. Keep to your standard, because that's where you drew the line, and you need to keep to it. Otherwise, you're no better than them, because you're too wishy-washy. You have to have things that they can't cross, and they have to be real.
Absolutely. No, that's good.
I want to mention one more thing on that, because I know you have some other questions, but I do have a tough time, because you talk on these concepts a lot, and a lot of current events. But I have a tough time like always engaging in these conversations, because I feel like we have to be very careful of having intellect conversations about such simple issues. Like, we don't sit around and get a panel of people and get really deep on what it means 1 + 1. Like male, female, we have to be careful engaging in certain conversations. Not that we're not countering them or being productive to support morality and to get rid of these things, but to engage in conversations of nonsense, you have to be careful how you do that. And I think people need to be careful how they engage on social media. I don't have that, but when people are battling, transgender, homosexuality, all these, current topics, we have to be careful how we're going about that, because you're entering in a scope that is so foolishness that the Bible is very clear that you can't see who is the fool and not the fool when you're engaging. It's very clear that you have to be careful how you engage with these people. And so I think the reaction and the debates kind of need to go away. I don't need to debate 1+1. I don't need to debate male and female. We have to address it with our standards and making sure that we don't let those things into our life in certain levels.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think that that's a good point. Your standard is the grounding. And like you said, 1+1 isn't debatable. It's just, it is what it is. So to say 1+1 is 2 and walk away, if you're going to argue
Correct. Yeah.
that, yeah,
I
like,
don't want, yeah, I'm not going to engage in that. Yeah. You don't want to engage in that.
right, right. So with this transgender stuff, which is really not the whole point of our conversation today, but we're getting to the manliness part because we have 3 boys and it matters to us very much so what this culture says about men and how we raise our boys. But before we get into that, I've always said, and I see people putting this on social media all the time with the transgender thing, they're saying women are being erased. And I agree with that. I think, if you're saying that there's no difference between male and female, and this man can just put on a dress and call himself a female, and then take this woman's, swim against females in sports and take her medals and take her scholarships and all of these things, they are replacing women in that regard. But what they don't realize is that men are also being replaced, because if you're taking a man and saying, oh no, you can just throw on a dress and be a woman and here take her place, they're actually distorting the whole concept of male and female, period. And I think that that's what people need to keep in the forefront of their mind. And so with that, the rise of like fatherlessness in the home over the years, because we talked about that, and that's huge. And I know that you've looked at statistics on that and things. Do you think society feels that men can be easily replaced, and that's why they're not recognizing, even with this trans issue, that it's not only the women being replaced, but it's actually the men being replaced too?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, the whole thing is, so what is it that Matt Walsh has, that what is a woman? And
Mm,
people have a tough time. So it has this, you're right. It starts off with women being replaced, but people can't define what a man is anymore either, and it's mainly the men. They are taking over women roles, in sports. You don't see any women dominating or switching over and doing very well in a man's sport. It just doesn't exist. So this concept of blurring the lines between men and women, I think Jordan Peterson talks about that a lot too, when he says we're mostly common. They're trying to blur the lines with all these things that we're the same as. But we need to remember that you're supposed to be represented by the things that make you unique, that make you masculine and feminine, not the things that make us the same.
mhm.
And they're trying to blur the lines. And the reason why people are getting confused is because they are not thinking well right now. They don't think well. They don't understand the truth. And see, we have this overwhelming amount of knowledge, and that's kind of phasing out to have to understand anything. So when you have this much knowledge online, you don't need to understand. And back in the day, you really needed to understand how things work and were processed. And so people are just confused on how, this whole, like I said, 1+1, men versus women, this shouldn't even be a real topic. But I was talking to you earlier about how right now culture is so soft and it's so easy. And especially here in America, it's very easy that men aren't needed. Just like we talked about, it's a godless nation. You don't need God. What are you praying for? You don't need food on the table for the most part. A lot of people don't. They've got jobs. They have their iPhone. They have Starbucks. They have all these things. We're a very spoiled country. So you don't need God here. You're not praying for these to fill in the gaps. And they did the same thing with men. Men will have an extreme value again when things get tough, because men will rise to the occasion. They're gritty. They can provide. Those innate things that are in a masculine man aren't valued now because they don't need it.
Right.
Anybody goes out, they're all given money. So they're kind of washing away the importance that a man brings to the table, but they don't realize there's still a man in their life. It's whoever's providing for you. It's the government. You're just getting it from somewhere else. So you're listening to what they're telling you too.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I definitely think that we have a society that is saying we don't need men because you have these women who are, more women go to college and graduate from college now than men, hands down. We've even talked before about skilled labor positions are so needed because you don't have a lot of boys saying, oh, I want to use these tools. I want to go weld. I want to learn how to, use a hammer and whatever, else that they used to be so needed for plumbing jobs and things. And we look at all that because it's over the generations of really putting feminist or feminism on this pedestal. You've really taken men and I guess demasculated them in a sense of saying, well, I don't want to be that man then. Like, and then we've also heard this week about pornography kind of being the biggest contributor to why men are even losing the testosterone hormone, which I didn't even know that, like, environmentally you can be in an environment that doesn't produce a hormone like testosterone based upon what you're putting in your eyes. That is crazy to me. So then,
these are all new things that I've learned as well. So obviously we know pornography is rampant now with all men and especially young boys now, because they have access to it. And I believe the study says that from the 50s and 60s, so our parents or our grandparents, that testosterone in an average man is down 50%. Well, that is the masculine trait. That's what makes men, that sternness, that helps correct boys. So if you're losing that, and you're not losing it just with the vision, they had other studies such as, because women are dominating in college and in the workplace, they're less needed. So men are retreating back and they're getting lazier. And then another one had to do with like weight and stuff, but like America is the fattest, like one of the fattest nations. Yeah. And that also lowers testosterone too. So you have all these things hitting us, and we are becoming less men. It is very true. Testosterone is down a lot in everybody.
Yeah. Okay. So that's another thing that we've been talking about, because that's why I did that reaction video. And I can't remember the guy's name again. He's not as well known as Andrew Tate, but he rolled with that group of people. And I was talking about this with our middle one the other day when we were at coffee, because he was talking about manliness and things like that. Because again, we talk about this stuff a lot in our home with having 3 boys, and with the culture being the way that it is with gender and things, these conversations naturally flow. I asked him too, why do you think the guys like David Goggins, Andrew Tate, we were talking about Joe Rogan earlier, things like that. Why do you think culture's like, oh, wait, wow, look at those guys? And he said, because they're looking for an example of manly men, because culture has put guys like Dylan Mulvaney on a Bud Light can. And I find that to be also with you're saying, okay, look at our culture. Men aren't quote unquote needed. They are, but I know what you're saying. We're not having men to go work in fields. We have machines for that, right? Men go buy their machines. We're not needing men to go. We're losing men in the skilled work area, but they are needed. They're just saying, hey, we're getting a shortage here with men and skilled working. We need that, but they're not going to those places. So you have men that are needed, but quote unquote easier life doesn't need the masculine strong man.
Well, it's erasing the separation between men and women is what I was getting at. Not that you don't need it. Right. It's just the things that make men that women can't do.
Sure.
Those are being blurred. So it looks as if you don't need a man in your life. Just like when you talk about fatherlessness, you still, as a woman right now, you still have a man to take care of you. They'll cut you a check.
Right.
And they still make the man pay. You just don't need him around. So they're substituting the man out in a lot of different areas.
That's a good word. Substitute. That's the best word, because you can't replace him.
No, you can't.
You'll never replace the man. You'll never replace the father. You're not going to replace him, but they are trying to substitute him. But what I was trying to get at, and you did say it better than me, but you do have the need. Men have a need to see an example of strong men. The problem is we have a pendulum swing from totally feminine, wearing a skirt, running around and acting like bugs are getting on you and trying to be women. And then you have this pendulum swing of men who are like work out in the gym all day, wearing tight clothes and ties and, these jackets and womanizers. And this is the way that I am, and totally unattractive to me, but whatever. I'm saying, like I told you that before, but we have this pendulum swing again. Where is we need godly men. to stand up and say, hey, but my point is men are needing that example.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I look to other men. I mean, I look at those guys. I've watched Jordan Peterson. I listen to how Elon Musk thinks. I even listen to Andrew Tate, Joe Rogan. I mean, I'm looking for what gems of knowledge and different walks of life I can attach to myself as a man. So you learn from examples.
Right.
But so the pendulum swinging that far, I mean, I think that's a natural thing. When one goes too far, we go even farther, right? I think the sad part is when you watch these men who are coming to the top, Joe Rogan, Andrew Tate, and that guy in that video that you, I think you posted on one of your reels. These men who are rising are honestly, they're not intelligent. They're not smart. They're doing very simple things, but because when I said that we're so knowledgeable, knowledge is endless with the iPad and the iPhone. You could look up anything. We have no understanding. So when you have these men who are polished, I mean, they're going to working out, they pull up in their Ferraris, they got women around them. You think that there's success attached. So when they say things such as a man ain't a woman, I'm the man, I'm in charge, I'll take care of women, people are applauding them and they're rising to the top, but those are kindergarten things. Those are elementary things that we already know. But because we lack such a massive amount of understanding on anything, they look like they're smart. The reason why they're falling, though, and they look foolish and they don't represent well, is that they don't attach any of this to any morality. They want to have these terms that God has established without the moral part. So it's get money however you can, and they look good doing it. They get all the women you can. Well, those are being represented incorrectly, because I think those are easy things to do. Sleeping with as many women as you want shows that you have no filter. Like, you're just giving in to everything. Not controlling your mouth. You're just giving in. It's easy to throw around curse words and to talk trash and to what do you call that when you're on like Twitter and you're knocking each other back and forth? I don't know the term of that. I forget.
Keyboard warrior.
Yeah. So you're just kind of battling each other. It's easy to do. It's harder, and men do tough things. So as a Christian man, to do tough things is to be with one woman, get married and be loyal to one woman, control your tongue, train up young men the right way. They fall off because they do no morality. They, like that guy that was talking, he's very polished, but then he says, I can't be with one woman. It's not built in me. Well, I don't care if it's built in you. That's a cop out. You're supposed to do tough things as a man. And a tough thing to do as a man, men are over sexually, or over, what do you call it?
Overly sexual.
Yeah, they are. That's just how it is. That's why porn runs rapid. So you want to, as a Christian man, your job is to combat that. You marry a woman and you dedicate yourself to that woman. Those are the hard things men should be doing, not giving in to every little thing that feels good. So they're playing the part, but they fall, just like Andrew Tate had a crazy rise, but he crashed just as fast as he rose. And so are these other guys. And we need men. Christians need to start stepping up and realizing that because you have morals, you're not weak. It's harder to have morals than it is to not have morals. And men need to be represented. I really don't know how to go about that, but need to be represented better in that and not be ashamed that they have morals. Yeah. These guys aren't more manly because they don't have morals. You should be looked at as more manly because you do have morals. That's a more difficult thing to do than the other. That's what I was trying to get at.
That's good. Yep. That's really good. So sometimes you and I, we take walks. Well, we take walks a lot and we talk a lot about parenting our kids. And I know sometimes we will get into a little bit of not a disagreement. Well, it could be like a crossroads here. I'm like, okay, well, I want to handle it this way, or you want to handle it a certain way. But that's because, again, I'm coming at it from a mother's perspective and then the nurturing and how are they feeling? And is this going to hurt their heart? And you're coming at it from tough love. This is a dad that's going to say, man up, dude. Like, this is tough. And so what do dads bring to the table of parenting that moms can't? And we're not saying just because dads bring this to the table that moms aren't needed. That's what people need to realize. You bring stuff to the table that I don't bring to the table, and I bring stuff to the table that you don't, but they're both needed.
Yeah. So definitely what I bring to the table if you want to package it up by itself, it's not that good. And if you package up what you bring to the table, it's not that good. But when you have them together, a mother and a father, it works very well. And it's the correct formula. One on its own isn't good, and the other on its own isn't that great either. You bring that nurturing, you walk the boys through their feelings, you have them talk about it. Those are all good things. And sometimes they need to be set straight. And women, I don't believe they should have to play that role. You hear, I think we just heard an article with, I think that current event where that guy on the train choked the other guy out and he ended up passing away. Well, come to find out, he's hit a couple of his grandmas. He beats on his mom, or I don't know all the story, but you hear a lot of stories in line with that, which is this young kid's rebelling and hits his mom, hits his grandma. And with men, that doesn't work, because there is a line of physicality that comes in with that. And you have to have that sternness. Young men, especially our boys, they can get aggressive, they can get worked up over the top. And what brings them down is another man. Back to reality. So you have to have that. You're talking them through these things. And sometimes they just need roadblocks that say, don't go any farther. And that comes with the father in the house. And I had a tough talk, and I'd like to actually mention it on this. Our middle boy was having a tough time, and he was acting out, and I could tell he was acting out. He was being very aggressive in his talk, and I didn't like it. I said, hey, let's go for a walk. And we went for a walk, and I go, what's going on with you? I go, I don't like what's going on here. And he actually started crying and saying, I'm just having a tough time at school. He goes, no one likes me. I don't have any friends. No one likes me. And it's hard to do, but you look at him, I go, because you're unlikable. What you're doing right now is not a friendly person. I go, if it wasn't me being your dad, I go, you're not a likable person, what I'm looking at right now. But I go, we can change that. So those tough talks of being able to tell your boy, you're not a good man right now. You're not likable, but we can change that. And here's how you go about doing it. So you have to have correctiveness with it. But as a man, you can't be afraid to put those roadblocks up and turn their head the other direction and say, you're going to walk this way now. We're not going to walk down that road any farther. And that's done. And that's why you see a lot of young men who are only in houses with mothers rebel. They don't have those roadblocks, and men bring those roadblocks.
Yes, that's the thing about our boys. Two of them, 19, 17, and then Brody, he's young. We haven't really had to do this yet. He hasn't even gone through, the next stages of development. So he's not got that testosterone hormones going.
Yeah.
But the other two, since we moved here, they've grown so much, but you've also had to really take the reins of parenting in the sense of they're coming into manhood. I mean, just graduated right before we left. Our middle just graduated, and they're working now. They're trying to figure out finances. They're trying to figure out, okay, Dad, how do I invest? They're talking about, dating, and what does that look like? Being serious about dating, because they couldn't date till they were 16 anyways. And now it's like, they think about not just dating, but I want to date to get married, which is a different realm of life for us. But you've really, like, for me, if somebody said, how do you talk to your kids about being masculine? I don't talk to them about being masculine. I don't ever say, hey guys, this is how you be masculine. For one, I would not be able to tell them how to be masculine. I'd only be able to tell them off of my observation, not from experience, because I'm not a masculine. I'm a female. I'm their mom. So for me to teach my boys to be masculine is not even the thing I ever think about. And you don't think about that either. But you've taken the role of saying, this is how it is to be a man. And that's the part where your parenting as a father has come in so pricelessly over the last few years, where I've seen this, where I was always teaching and training and pouring into them and, helping them settle things and praying through things. And I'm not saying I don't still do those things, but that has taken the backseat compared to your training on the manliness part, the husband part, the father part, the being a man of God part, being responsible, character building, all of that. So that is one of the big differences too. You've stepped up where I just wouldn't have been able to, period. Because there was, we even, wouldn't there be like a turning point with our boys? Like if they didn't have you, like even with our middle one, kind of getting he wasn't aggressive and he was never like defiant, but he couldn't see past his own, like, why am I having this issue? And you had to
Mm-hmm.
put him in check and be like, hey, look at yourself in the mirror. Is this the
Mm-hmm.
kind of guy you want to be?
Yeah, definitely. It's very weird because when we had our kids and the boys, I didn't feel like I played a big role. Like I was dad, but you did everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned where I don't know really what age it was, maybe about the high school. I couldn't pinpoint it because it was more of a transition where you can see that if a dad doesn't start plugging himself back in,
Mm-hmm.
that you can see the detriment that can happen to young men, especially our boys. And I saw that importance. And I was like, oh man, I have to step in here because these are things that Shanda can't teach.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing worse than a woman trying to tell a boy how to be a man. You're not a man. That's the important about being a man. I can't tell my daughter how to be a daughter, which we don't have one, but I'm not a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So when I step in, I'm not just guiding my boys and telling them what to do and correcting them. I have to show them by example. Just like you were talking about, men are starving for other good men to follow. So if you're not the one in the household leading that cause or stepping back in and not being present, you're going to see a big decline in your kids, especially if you have boys and you're raising them. You know, dads have to start plugging themselves in. And I'm sure there's a lot of good dads that take care of their babies, but man, as they get older, I see a massive swing where the dad plays a bigger role into teaching these men, because we've always talked about, you're not supposed to raise good boys. Your job is to raise good men, because by the time they're out of your house, they're men
Mm-hmm.
and they start to develop these traits. So you have to be the one that's paying attention and on board. And who better to do it than the dad, especially at the last few years before they step out of the house.
Yeah, exactly. Before I ask you the next question, it's 11:29. Don't you have to meet Hugh?
Yeah, I asked them to give me like 10 more minutes, 10
Okay,
more minutes.
perfect. We'll be done. Albert, sorry, Albert, we got another one for you to cut. So two more and then we'll be done. So I think this is a really fascinating thing. I was listening to a podcast a few weeks ago and I mentioned this to you about how basically men need women to tame them. And I think maybe some women could get offended by that, right? They'd be like, oh my gosh, like what? But I think that I've heard Jordan Peterson even say this. Men grow up when they have a reason, when they have someone to take care of, like when they get married and they're like, oh, wait, I want her. I want to provide for her. And I'll be honest, you did that. I mean, we got married 3 weeks after you turned 20 and you were like, oh, UPS got a job. You were like, oh, wait, you want to build a house? Let's build it. You want this? I'll give it to you. Like you literally moved, you pursued me, you moved on it, you provided, and you never quit. But before that, you were a kid riding dirt bikes, jumping ditches and playing baseball and all of that. And literally you went from night and day to 1 minute they're knocking on your door asking you to play basketball in your neighborhood. The next day you're married and your mom's like, he doesn't live here anymore. So why do you think, for one, I think that's a compliment, that when you say women tame men, like if a man catches your eye and he's like, that's the one I want to be with for the rest of my life, and she's able to say, we can settle down together, that shouldn't be a like, oh my gosh, like I'm the one who has to tame him. Like think of that as, I said this before, I said this in Reflections of Eve, we talk about this a lot, the 3 men in the Bible. You have the wisest man, Solomon, you have a man after God's own heart, David, you have Samson, the strongest man. They all fell at the hands of a woman, all of them. The wisest, the strongest, and the man after God's heart. Doesn't mean God didn't forgive David and things like that didn't work out. That's not the point. The point is their weakness was women. And so I wanted you to maybe just talk about that for a second, about how women tame men and why
Well,
is that fascinates me too. And I think it's just because
gotcha. Yeah. I don't know. Like, so you obviously, I don't know, is tame the right word, or is it more like the balance? Like, I feel like you balance me out.
Mhm.
You definitely, you keep me in line. So I guess that's taming somebody. But I think it's more as just women, like in a marriage, you definitely balance me out. And I think that's the whole point in marriage. And it goes back to Adam and Eve. You know, he's in the garden and he looks at her and he says, finally.
Mhm.
You know, that's how you should look at a woman. It's finally. It's not because you're just different. You're everything I'm not. and I'm everything you're not. So when I look at you, I see all the things that there's no way I can ever be. And that's why God made you.
Mhm.
And you should look at the woman that way. Now, obviously, with our fallen nature, I mean, maybe we men get caught up and look at all women that way. I'm not sure why that's a thing in men where they fall to women, but women are a struggle for men, and that's just a reality.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I don't know how to dive into that a little farther. I know it's a struggle,
Yeah.
and it's a struggle for every man out there. I don't care what age it is. It starts from young boys at different levels, all the way probably until the day
Yeah.
you're gone.
Yeah.
It's a struggle, but I know that when I think of you, I've always loved you because of what you're what I'm not. And that's why maybe they use terms like opposites attract and all these things. I think it's just a natural part of the things you aren't in me, and that's what's attractive.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. And I think I also get the part about growing up because like I said, I saw you do that. And I know that we've talked to our boys about you're going to be the provider. Doesn't mean their wives won't work. I don't know what their wives will decide to do, but you're going to be the provider. You're the protector. You're the one who guards and keeps your home because that's how God designed it. And I think that that's the part of the quote unquote tame. Maybe that's what they mean. Maybe they're not coming at it from a biblical worldview because it's not like I was listening to this from Christian men who are going back to like Genesis.
Mm,
But I think so their word is probably off. Like you said, is tame the right word? But I think what it is within the bounds of God's creation of male and female, and then becoming a united one flesh in marriage, which is the way God designed it. Maybe that looks like taming to the outside eye, to the one who's looking.
probably, probably.
Yeah. But in reality, it's God's perfect design where he says, like you said, I bringing it back to Genesis is great. Finally, like this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. We've become one, and and it's not the word complete because that's not what God means by, oh, you complete me, which is another cultural way of saying like I found my match. But it's more like God has given me this person to be by my side, and we do this life together. Like I think we were talking the other day as far as our boys, we said, oh, I said your dad's my partner in life, like we do this together, like the marriage, the kids. And one of them was like, I don't even like the word partner anymore because that's what people use these days when they're talking about like when they don't want to use husband, when they don't want to use the word wife, they use significant other or partner. And I said, but I'm using the word partner in the sense of we do life together, how God put Adam and Eve together where she was his helpmate. And I think that's a
Mm,
beautiful thing when you explain it from God's design. So the last thing
mm,
is we have teenage boys now. Why are dads such, because Father's Day is coming up, so that's why I wanted you to do this like in this timing as well. Why are dads such a pivotal part of this stage of teenage boys? We kind of touched on it, but if you have anything else to
mhm.
say, and why it's necessary that dads are not just there. It's not enough that you're just present in the home, but you're involved, that you see, that you recognize, hey, that's a bad attitude that needs to be corrected, and mom's hug isn't going to do it right now.
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on it. As boys turn into men, you just said that women want to tame men. So let's go with the idea that men are untamed. The only thing that can tame them and keep them in line is another man.
Mhm.
Men have that final line that women don't go to. When women yell and they get in arguments, I don't believe they think about physical altercations.
Yeah.
Men go to those altercations. So you have to know those lines. So not that you're going there, but that there is another set there with a man in the house. And that's why it's my rules are the highway. It's my house. They know they have to follow a set of guidelines, but there has to be something there that can hold those lines. And fathers hold those lines. Fathers represent those lines. They're supposed to hold them in their own lives, so they have to hold themselves to that same standard. And that gives the boys guidelines on how to act. But it's also when they act out of line, something has to be able to put them back in their place.
Mhm.
And the way it works is women can't put men physically back in their place. So you need a dad to do that.
Yeah.
And not that I know we're kind of using these terms, but not that I've had to physically you fight your sons. Like that's not how I look at that at all. I'm
Right.
just saying there has to be those lines that you're scared about. and
Mhm.
that you're nervous about. And you have to have like, oh, I don't want to cross that line. If you don't have those, then where's your relationship even with God? You'll cross those lines with God because he's not here to punish you right on the spot when you do cross those lines with sin.
Mhm.
So if you can't handle that, you're going to cross those lines with God, and we
Yeah.
know that's not good.
No, I think it's right. Like you're talking about an intimidation factors there. I can give the boys a look. Like I think there's a time when they know, okay, my mom is at that level now where I can't, there's nothing else that I can say here because she's mad or I've got her to this point and it is what it is. She's going to give me the consequences. That's a different kind of an intimidation. They know I'll never be able to use muscles or anything like that. But for you, there's a different level of intimidation. If dad would have to get involved in anything, then they know, okay, it's a strong hand, not a strong like fist or anything like that. It's just a strong hand to say, dad and mom are different. Mine might be a look that makes them know I'm serious. If you were to just stand up off the couch and say, they would know, okay, dad is
Correct.
being into
Mm-hmm.
this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, the good thing about our boys, we've from a very young age, and my mom did this to me, there was a certain level of respect, lines that I would not ever cross with her with disrespect. And I instilled that into the boys. They've never,
Mm-hmm.
ever been disrespectful where they're like, they've never told us to shut up,
No,
listen names, said they wouldn't
no.
listen, nothing. Has there been a time when maybe one of them has gotten close to it and we're like, hey, watch it? Yes. But the farthest I think we've ever had to say was watch it, because there's a level of respect you have to institute at such a young age.
But we've also set those standards in our house a long time ago. We don't tell each other to shut up.
Right.
So they don't see that represented in our house. So if they were to say certain things, that would not be a common scenario. That'd be very rare. They'd be the first ones to do it. So
Mhm.
the fact that there's not even room for those things to take place are good for kids. Like, you don't want to leave that room. If me and you are yelling and telling each other these things on a daily basis, that leaves them room to do that as well. So as parents, you cannot leave room for your kids to step in there and do those things.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this was a fun podcast episode to
Okay.
record with you. Haven't had you on in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And before we leave, I just want you to say, Test, how long have we been married?
Ooh, 22 years.
Ooh, you got it right. I'm very proud of you. Okay. And what
Got
are
it.
you going to buy me for
I
our
told you I can count. Remember when we started? I told you I can count.
Yes, you did. No, you did great. And I appreciate all
Mm.
your wisdom. And like I said, people don't know that you are the Aaron to my Moses, the one who helps me encourage things like that when
Yeah.
things are tough. And I appreciate all you do for our family.
Let me just leave with one thing, only because it was on my mind a lot. And I don't think I make things very clear. But with men, like we talked about the rise of these guys who are coming in and out, we have to stop looking at the lack of morality as being manly. And if I know you have a big following of women, when they look at their husbands, they need to encourage these moral things. They're not weak. Morality is tough,
Mhm.
and men who can keep it are tough. It's not easy. They
Yeah.
have to grit through those things and really try. So we need to start looking at that and encouraging that in our kids, and not as being a soft Christian. They're actually very difficult, and that's what makes a man, and that's what will change a lot of the way men think, is not by acting like these other guys in the world who just run wild. Controlling yourself is a definitely a very manly trait.
I think
Hopefully
that's a
that
great
helps.
point. No, I think that's a great point. And I think that's a good point to end on, because a lot of times, and this is the way that we're wired, women do not understand what men are tempted with, what men go through, just
Mm,
like men aren't, don't understand women. I think it was that old saying, men are from Mars and women are from Venus, whatever. It just, the point is that we're from two different planets and sometimes we just don't get it. Um, and that's okay. I don't think I have to understand everything that you're going through. I just have to know that that's what you're struggling with, so I can be that person to help you.
yeah, well, not just that, but like, I know everybody equates morality to like the sexual part. Morality is in everything, from when morality with good, bad, positive, negative. Everybody uses these decisions to make all the time, from politics to how you discipline your boys. Was that good, bad? Are you disciplining them correctly? Those are all moral questions. All of these things are. So I'm just saying, men who can keep to moral issues when it comes to transgender, homosexuality in the household, it's not always just sexual. It's even the good and bad on correcting your kids. So I'm getting to the whole like idea of morality, not just that part.
No, I think that's a
Okay.
great place to end it. And
Okay.
like I said, I think that you have a lot to offer. We need to hear more messages like this from men. It can't just be from, the Andrew Tates and all these other men. It has to be good, godly Christian men who are as handsome as you and,
All right.
who are good dads, who are good fathers and good husbands, and say, hey, this is what real men do. This is what a real man is. We need to hear those messages from men more. So I'm glad that you're here. And you know what? We'll be talking about this again in the future, I'm sure,
Okay.
and bring it to light more. And maybe even if you guys have any questions for us, even Dean, you can email me at hello@shandafulbright.com, and we can definitely answer those. If you have any questions about, we're not professionals on raising kids, of course, but we do have 3 boys of our own, and we are going through this together. And this is a culture that I never honestly thought when I had my first that we would be facing these things, down the line as parents. But God, He's put us here. He's put us here for this time, in this place that we're all in, wherever you live, whatever home you have, whatever, family you're with. Those are the ones we're stewarding. We must steward them well. And even though the culture looks different than maybe we thought it would when we had kids, it's okay. God's going to give us the wisdom and the knowledge and the understanding, as long as we're willing to put in the work to teach our kids and train them up. And again, we need to champion the good men in our life. If your husband is a good father, if he takes care of you guys, Father's Day is coming up. Don't let it go by without showing appreciation to the men in our lives who are faithful, who are providers, who are protectors, who are defenders, who go to church with you guys on Sunday and take the family. And if they don't, pray for them and realize that God is faithful. God loves them more than they do, than you do, and that He will give you the words in due time to continue to live that faithful life in front of them. And hopefully they will turn and call out to God. But again, if you have any questions, email me at hello@shandafulbright.com, and I'll catch you on the next one.